Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my show Camera Tuesday. In today's episode we're going to take a look at hot topic Canon EOS RP. So let's dive right into it. Now this review is a combination of all the review that I have collected over the internet, and I have provided some links down below. So what the heck it is this? It's a basically second full frame camera from Canon, which is mirrorless. That's all you have to understand. Canon already released Canon EOS R. That was the first full frame mirrorless. This is the second full frame mirrorless. Now it is the cheapest full frame camera right there right now. So like if you go to the market and you're like, okay, I want a cheap mirrorless full frame camera, this is the cheapest. Like the closest is like literally multiple hundreds of dollars away, like in terms of latest release. Now, if you want to understand how the heck Canon can do something like this, you have to understand the cost is more or less the same as Canon 60 Mark II. The core is exactly the same. Of course, the processor has been updated. You had to add another display added to it for viewfinder, but core is the same. So if you want to understand about image quality, that is the image quality. Now, if you pay for $1,400, you will get adapter in the box. Basically this basic adapter, not that fancy ND adapter or even the adapter that has the basically control knob. So be aware of that. Now right now, if you book early on before 30 March, you will get this adapter included in $1,300. Once that time is crossed, then you have to pay $1,400 to get that adapter included, and I would urge you to do so. Now this does have some things upgraded, like my personal favorite, UHS 2 card. Basically you have to have this kind of SD card. Does not mean like you can't use normal card. You can use this one, and this will help your production line greatly. And this Canon, since apparently they hold the patent on full frame flip out screens, so this is a flip out screen, a proper actual flip out screen. So let's talk about video. Now flat out, if you want to think about video, do not think of this camera as 4K. This is even more limited than EOS R. EOS R had a crop, but at least 4K was working with autofocus. This time 4K autofocus has been disabled. The dual pixel autofocus has been replaced with contrast detect, which is nowhere near as good as dual pixel or compared to any other competition. So flat out, if you are even thinking about it like this, you wanted to buy this camera for video, do not do so. And even in HD, this is the part that kind of frustrated a lot of people. Like Canon is actually going into the territory of evil. They are not going into the territory, okay, we can't do full frame 4K. This is like, okay, we're not gonna give you a camera, we're gonna cripple the camera. So they have limited HD. Now first of all, what does that hack mean? Now many of you have already heard of that. It does not allow 24 frames per second. Basically, if you are doing a cinematic short movie, you can't use this camera because 24 frames per second is not there. Now many people like, what about 25 frames per second? No, that's not how that works. You have to have 24. Now it's frustrating simply because this is a feature that they removed. On a $1,300 camera, this is a feature they removed. Like they actually went inside the software and firmware and they deleted it. So that's why it has limited HD. On top of that, if you ever thought like, okay, 4K has a crop into it, how about I use the AP, basically EFS lenses, basically the lens that were created specifically for APS-C. That way you can get ultra wides, which are not available for full frame. I mean, like they are available, but the range is not as grand as you wish for. You cannot use that. The moment you put this EFS lenses, you might be aware of that EFS lens screwed us out a little bit. Now that is not a problem when you have an adapter, because the adapter is basically blank space. So there is no issue with that. Mounting is flawless, but the moment you mount it, it will disable full HD and it will allow you to only do 720p. So even if you are like, okay, I'm gonna do 4K, which is without autofocus, and you might be like, okay, I am coming from Canon 80D or Canon 800D like what I have. I thought of this. It's like, okay, at least both of my lenses will work. No, only the full frame one will work. The second one will automatically disable 1080p. So basically in that regard, this goes even further than my Canon 800D, which I bought almost 1.5 years ago. So this is what I am specifying. If you want to think, even consider remotely about this camera for video, do not do so. Just get Canon A6400. You can check my last episode about that. Now the reason for that is like, it has actual 4K with proper autofocus, the autofocus that can almost give beat Canon dual pixel autofocus. So flat out, there is no question about that. If you are thinking about video, just buy this, buy a full frame lens, and then be happy about it, because you can upgrade the body later. They don't have to change the basically format adapter or anything like that. Just buy this, you will be happier. And not to mention, it does not have limited recording. This has 30-minute limited recording. However, we still have to wait for people to confirm that this EU actually removed the tariff, because if they had done that and then Canon came out with time limited recording, that means they are just doing that to protect their high-end line. So be aware that if video is your thing, do not even think about it. And let's say you want to get to full frame and you have already invested a lot of money in Canon, just get 60 Mark II. They are available at a very very high discount, and you will get actually better performance than this one. So if video is a thing, do not even think about it, don't even touch it. Now many people nowadays is like, well, I don't care about video, I want photo. Okay, it's good. It's not bad, it's not great, it's good. It's a good camera. Everywhere from Jared Porden to whoever did this, it's like, yeah, it's good. It's nothing awe-inspiring. However, because the sensor is ancient at this point in time, the dynamic range is kind of less. Like if you compare this to Sony A7 Mark II, which is available new at the same price, the Mark II will beat it. And low noise performance and other things also. So be aware, the image quality is just good. Do not expect this body to be like, oh my god, I put some high quality lens, now I'm like mind blown. The sensor is not that good, it's just good enough. Now the reason why Canon is even serious about this is simply because they have great lens selection. If this is what you do, these lenses are top of the line. Not only in cost, they are very good in quality. The only way you can compete even with this is like you have to get Sony G Master lens, some Sigma art lenses. So be aware of that, like they have good lens selections. However, the speed is very slow. It's upwards of 3 frames per second with autofocus. I'm not talking about like how you disabled disable autofocus, then you get to 6 frames per second, but it is very slow. To give you a context, my 800D has better burst rate. That means if you are doing, let's say, even a kid's soccer game, burst mode is something that you would want to have. This does not have it, and this is a disabled feature because a 24 megapixel and a UHS Card 2 slot, that simply means you have to disable it. So again, they are crippling their camera. Now they are advertising eye autofocus. Now again, Sony did not just got into eye autofocus one day. They're like, I woke up, okay, my camera will have eye autofocus. It took them time, years of development, years, as in like 4 and 5 years of development, multiple camera bodies, for them to reach a point where they can say, okay, my eye autofocus is that good that it can detect eye of an animal. This, however, everyone who is using it, they are like, dude, if you are this far away, it will not do it. So basically, eye autofocus is very poor. Now, is it good enough like if you are very close to the subject? Yes, but be mindful, if you have this kind of shallow depth of field, specifically this 50mm f1.2 lens, not f1.4, f1.2 lens, it will miss focus. So be aware of that. The eye autofocus, it's not up to the par yet. It does take time. This kind of technology is not something that you can have overnight. So if you are thinking, okay, now I finally have something that gives me the flexibility of doing eye autofocus, not happening anytime soon. Now this one again, Canon has to cripple their camera. They crippled it by disabling silent mode. Now silent mode is there, but you cannot do silent mode plus manual system. Basically you have to be in auto. That is solely done so people have to buy RP, basically R lenses, R camera body. So this is kind of frustrating. A, its eye autofocus is not that good. B, the limited silent mode, this is just a software function that they are blocking. They are like, okay, it doesn't matter that it's a 24 megapixel camera, because people 24 to 30 megapixel is not that big of a difference. Your file size goes bigger, but your overall image resolution does not go dramatically high. You can tell the difference between 12 megapixel and 24 megapixel, but 24 to 30, that's not as clear as you would think, and 30 to 40, it's even less. So the fact that they are disabling the system is very dangerous. That simply means you are paying money to a company that inherently will keep disabling the features and functions. So in photo wise, is it a good system? Yes. Does it have great lens selection? Of course. Now what about everything else, like extra bread and butter like burst shooting, silent shooting, and eye autofocus? Do not think about them. Don't even think about them, don't even consider it. So if you're going into Canon system new, do not think about this. You can get Sony A7 Mark II, which will have better color reproduction than Canon. literally, I'm not joking about that. So now, of course, these lenses are very high end. So if you are comparing this with A series lens Sony system, please get Sony G glass, not anything lower than that. So then the question becomes, should you buy or not? Now first, it has great lens selection system, and I'm not talking about adapter lenses, that's not out of the question. I'm just talking about the lens that you can directly buy natively. It does have the best right now possible, and it has a flip out screen, which no other company is going to give us. So if flip out screen is important to you, get it. Like, these are the two reasons I would recommend it. However, the reason why it's frustrating to me is that I am using Canon 800D, which has this LPE17 battery. Here's the deal. It's a very puny battery. Now, to give you a context that Canon has to cripple their camera, they literally came up with the idea that we're gonna make a camera so small that it's difficult to use, and we're gonna sell you a $80 grip with just a grip. Like, it's not extra battery, it's just a grip. And to give you a context, full frame camera always consumes more power compared to a APS-C system if everything else is the same. So Canon knows this. Canon is like, okay, for 800D APS-C system, or even smaller than that, they're like, okay, use this battery. For M50, use this battery, because this battery has 7 watt-hour of capacity. Here's the deal. For 6D Mark II, they give upgraded battery. Basically, these batteries can go upwards of 14 watt-hour, twice as this power. You have to have this. 6D Mark II has a bigger battery than this system. Like, this really represents the danger with Canon. Canon is like flat out at this camera. They are like, okay, we're gonna cripple it and you have to buy it. So this is why I will never ever recommend Canon to anyone. And I have provided a link down below about a guy, Jacob here, and he makes very good interesting videos. And he was the guy in all videos is like, people are wrong about Canon EOS R, people are wrong about Panasonic system and all that, because he's like a very positive guy. Even he broke with this camera, because this crippling system is like, what is the use of this tiny battery? Yes, you can charge it in a USB system, but it's a full frame system. Full frame camera requires a lot of energy. You know this, like Canon knows this. That's why Canon full frame have bigger batteries. It's like inherently they are crippling the camera. It's like, and they have $80 grip, which everybody flat out is saying you have to have this. So understand this. That means they could have put a bigger battery and made the camera usable, but they are like, no, we have to cripple it. We have to cripple it. This small battery will irk you more than anything else. It's like 250 shots CPA rating, and people who are getting like 300 and 400, good for them, but I will not count on that. Why? Because I know how this battery lasts. I am using it. It's not a good battery. Canon knows this. That's why Canon full frame 5D Mark II and Mark III, they have a 14 watt-hour battery. 7 watt-hour is just not enough. To give you a context, Sony, the biggest Sony battery can go upwards of 23 watt-hour. So flat out, this is really bad. The fact that they are crippling the battery, because this is the core point. You're not gonna be like having a USB battery bank and then just running a cable through your sleeve and be like, yeah, I'm charging the battery all the time, because the battery is too small. And shutter drop, this mechanism was kind of nice. This was like, okay, because you have a mirrorless system, the sensor is very close to the outer hole and there is no glass to protect it. So Canon introduced a system of shutter drop. So basically, the moment you remove the lens, the shutter will drop. That's awesome. That's like somebody sat down and designed it properly. That's awesome. They disabled it. It's like they had to cripple it. It's like, oh dude, our EOS R is not that good. It's like, for that price, it's not that good. Flat out, it's not that good, especially for newcomers. It's good for those who are stuck with a Canon system like I am, because I have Canon lenses. But for anybody who new, they're like, dude, for $2,300, you're not giving anything other than a flip out screen. That's it, and everything else is worse. So they had a system where cut and drop happened, which was nice, which was like a really good system. They disabled it in this. They didn't know. That's frustrating. They did not have to do that. That's like, I'm just gonna cripple my camera because I can. So now this is the part that I want you guys to pay close attention to. When you are thinking you are buying a cheap camera, you're not buying a cheap camera, you are buying a very expensive system. The camera is cheap, but the lenses are ludicrously expensive. And be aware of that because Sony has opened their lens mount. Basically, the E-mount is now open source. Open source as in not for you and me, open source for Sigma and Tamron. Those companies can make native glass, which they don't have to reverse engineer. That means those lenses can be, if there is a bug with the lenses, it can be fixed by Sony or the company using your camera itself. You don't have to go to any basically repair shop or things of that nature. And lenses will work reliably. So because Canon makes a lot of the money from the lens department, they have to block the system. So even if you bought a, let's say flat out, you went out there and bought Canon EOS R system, the R lenses are not available by third party. Be aware of that. That means the lenses would be very expensive and you will have no other choice. Like, there are two classes in lenses in Canon, your red ring one and their non-red ring one. However, even non-red ring one would be very expensive. Why? Because there is no competition, there is no third-party manufacturer. So be aware of that. You may be buying a cheap camera, but you will be buying ludicrously expensive lens, and at the other end you'll be like, did I save money? And only thing you would have at the other end of it is like a flip out screen. That's it, nothing else. Not good enough video quality. Like, Sony released this camera A6400 just a few days ago, a $900, which is like, of course people are saying it does not have IBIS. I understand IBIS is expensive technology. It has flip up screen. Okay, difficult, but it does not have any recording limit. That means if there is a scenario where European Union is like, we're not gonna tax you, Sony is like, okay, my customer should enjoy that privilege. Canon is like, no, we have to cripple our camera, otherwise nobody is gonna buy our ultra crippled camera. So please be aware. Do not jump into the Canon system. It's like, oh, I have a cheap camera. No, you have a cheap camera with ludicrously expensive lens. Be aware of that. And that, to give you a context, let's say you right now today bought a Canon Sony 7 Mark III. You can have this Tamron 24 to basically 28 to 75 f2.8 lens, which is very cheap, very lightweight, and very good. Then you can have Sigma art lenses, which are top of the line in terms of quality. And there is this lens, which I was shocked to find out that there is a lens for full frame that has 10x zoom range. That's amazing. Now, of course, this is not the highest and red ring capacity. Sony does not even brand it as G lens. But this is a very good lens. Like, if you want to start photography today, you bought Sony A7 Mark III and you bought this lens, which is a very cheap lens. You have a 10x lens on a freaking full frame. That's amazing. And everyone who used this, they're like, it does have a distortion, which of course it's an undeniable fact of reality. You have to have distortion if you have 10x of range. It goes from 24 to 240, and this is a full frame system. This system is so unique. This is only found in Sony, and Canon is now releasing it. Right now you do not have this lens for Canon full frame, flat out. So this was amazing, and this is cheap lens. This is a good starting point. So that's why I'm saying, please be aware of this. You are buying a cheap camera, which is a cheap camera. It's not like, holy crap, how the heck they packed so many technology in. That's like, they crippled the camera. You're gonna regret it after you have used it. Now, of course, it's a good camera. By no means it's a bad camera, but against the competition, it's nowhere near. And the money you saved in the basically body, you would have spent 2 to 3 times more than that in lenses. So please be aware of that. I do not recommend anybody buying this, because this is the biggest problem, battery itself. Like, Canon knows that you need bigger battery for full frame. That's why they give 14 watt-hour battery. They are like, okay, let's give it you 7 watt-hour, so you can keep charging it every 5 minutes. So yes, it's a good camera. Yes, it's a effective camera, but you are buying an interchangeable lens camera. That means you're supposed to buy lenses. Now, if you're like, I'm not gonna buy lenses, buy a Sony RX100, I would say. Because flat out, supporting a company that does things like this, flat out shutter drop, which is a software, like, why they are disabling that shutter drop? That makes no damn sense. Like, everything else I can justify, that I cannot justify. Small battery, which they themselves know, and the fact that they know they made cameras so small that it's uncomfortable to use, and everybody's like, dude, you have to have that $80 grip, which does not even have extra memory or extra battery. It's just a fancy grip. So Canon, which everybody is like, dude, those cameras are good to use, easy to use, but again, the battery life is small. The body is so small that it's difficult to use unless you buy their own proprietary thing. So, and the money you saved in the system, you would have lost easily in the R lenses series, and there won't be any third-party lenses anytime soon. Sony already has this system. I already specified this is a very cheap, very effective lens. This is a very cheap, very effective lens. There are high-quality lenses, and there are G master lenses, which are almost on the same level as EOS R series lenses. Now, of course, if you put it side by side, you will be like, okay, R lenses are a bit more better. But if you don't have that, you will be like, okay, this is a good lens. And all Sony lenses, I'm actually surprised. All the Sony default native lenses, they have very quiet autofocus system. They're very quiet. Like, you would be surprised. Like, if you directly compare that against any other lens, you'll be surprised. Even Sigma art lenses, Sony figured out how to make quiet autofocus. So to buy or not buy, if you are stuck like me, you have Canon lenses and you have spent enough money that you are kind of stuck at this point, and if you have full frame lenses, yeah, buy it. What else you gonna do? But be aware, only good thing you're gonna get is a flip out screen, and a great lens system. Would you get 4K in future? No. By the time Sony, by the time Canon gives you proper full frame 4K 30 frame per second without any crop with proper autofocus, it would be around 2025. So again, to buy or not to buy, if you are stuck like me, buy it. If you're not stuck, you want to start new, please look into Sony system, because the lenses are already out. The third party lenses are already cheap. They have bigger battery, which you're gonna hate this part, trust me, I know. So to buy or not to buy, again, I would say no, stay away from it. So this was my presentation on Canon EOS RP. So I hope you liked it or learned from it. In that case, please leave a like and also click my ads. It pays me, so please. And if you didn't, don't worry about it, you can dislike it. I would urge you to press the dislike button twice, and please leave a comment because I reply to all of them. And I would urge you to subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.